Okay, good evening, everybody. Hope everyone's okay. Hope everyone is good. For those of you that I actually got to catch up with over the weekend, it was good seeing you all, good speaking to you all. For those of you that we didn't get to catch up because you weren't there, well, the recording of what I spoke about should be coming out pretty soon. I know some of the other stuff has started to come out, and perhaps that's a good place actually to start, because I spoke on Saturday about why, Bitcoin's been a bit more of a focus this time around for me. And whilst, for those of you who haven't seen it, it's still worth a watch when you get there. I've actually gone and done something this weekend which kind of contradicts that. And that's the focus really on whether or not we're starting to see a shift away from Bitcoin towards that altcoin, and some of the indicators that I've been looking at to make a decision in which, as I did post in Discord, I've decided to actually sell some of my BTC, move it into altcoins as purely a BTC seesaw play. That's it. So I'm not necessarily too worried about the dollar value of it. I'm just trying to maximize the BTC value. I will go through that in a lot more detail, but it's kind of interesting for those of you that were there on Saturday, and there I'm talking about Bitcoin being the all singing, all dancing, and then the title of this one just being Altseason BOOMSday. Kind of contradicts each other, but that's where we are. Thanks everyone for jumping in. There is a poll because I was asked one question which we'll go over a little bit later on, and it was Taylor that asked it. I wanted to just understand, not just from my point of view, but everybody in the communities, how they're managing their subnets, how much exposure they have to subnets, how they're keeping on top of that. So the poll there, if you're watching, please do contribute. It's just so we can try and get an understanding of how the rest of the group is doing. Are you in subnets? If so, how deep are you in subnets? And perhaps when we get to it, feel free to drop a chat about how we're managing that, etc. I think we will, other than that, jump straight in and we will go and see what's happening. You're absolutely welcome. Grandeur Property Short Stay Specialist, Taylor. Love it. Love the title as well. Okay, hopefully the charts are up. Perfect. They are. Most of the charts that you've seen here, they are looking today, and just look at Bitcoin on the top chart there, looking pretty darn nice. Last time we spoke, we were at 96,000, and then back end of last week, we saw a shoot through that 100K. Actually, no real issue in getting through that 100K, and then we consolidated over the weekend. I know some people were a little upset because there was a slight pullback yesterday, but we can't expect north in every direction, and we're looking quite nice at the moment. We're just about 104,000 off the back of some good CPI data and some good other news, which we'll discuss shortly. Obviously, we're going to break Bitcoin's price down in a lot more detail later on. Now, on the bottom list, you can't see me probably. I've actually changed it up. I just wanted to have a look. This is the NASDAQ here, but just look at that V-shaped reversal. I mean, we're talking 4 weeks ago, and people were shitting the bed. Bear market territory for the NASDAQ, with a massive drop down into the 16,000s, and yet within 4 short weeks, we're actually only about 5% off all-time highs. It has been an incredible reversal, and the last 3 or 4 days have really seen that move. So we're taking into account effectively today and yesterday, because Sunday for the markets was closed, but some very positive ones there. We'll have a look at some of the other traditional markets, but it's kind of reflected across the board. Hello to everyone. Sorry if I haven't said hello. Obviously, welcome in. And if you've got any comments or questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. Now, looking at total 3, I mean, I made this point again on Saturday. I made it last week, and I'll continue to make it. I'm liking the move. Of course I am. We've had that big move from 640 billion. We're pretty much knocking on the door of $1 trillion now. I mean, we're 72 billion between friends. But we have hit this neckline. It really has been a bit of a neckline. Now, what I am obviously grateful for over the last week or so is just finally getting past sort of this level here. That's sort of, let's just call it, I don't know, 820 billion to sort of 850 billion. The point I'm trying to make is that we were talking about this sort of W formation, W bottom formation, coming back up to the waistline and being rejected from it. Obviously, since the last call, we've managed to break through it. But unfortunately, like a Russian doll, it's just waistlines in front of waistlines. And so we've got this big waistline at the moment, just over 900 billion. It was the support of the double top that we saw there. It was also the level for the Kobo. We've wicked up to it a couple of times. And yes, we're just tipping our head through that level, but I really want to see us get above that, close above it, consolidate from it, move up. Then I'm going to be very happy about Altseason. But the fact actually that we broke through this level here was one of the things that made me feel pretty good about that flip from Bitcoin into altcoins. There were other things as well, but of course that move was so fast we come across another resistance level. So, you know, we've got to take these steps. Obviously, I get that, but we are hitting one, and maybe that's going to just be a bit of a stuttering block. I really hope not. It has been some very strong movements at the moment. Mark, it's good catching up with you. As I said, it's good catching up with everybody that was there over the weekend, and actually being able to have some alcohol for once. It's been a while since I've had a few drinks, so that was good. Sound like a raging alcoholic there. And then, of course, saving the best for last, I suppose, is BitTensor. A lot of discussion over the weekend on BitTensor, mainly about subnets and alpha and everything else. But the fact of the matter is, this classic V-shaped reversal, we talked about that strength with BitTensor last week, continuing to show itself. You know, we were worried at the beginning of the month with sort of this kind of hesitation here. So when we were on the call on Tuesday, we were falling back down, you know, a couple of high tests there, but actually maybe not nothing to be worried about too much, just a retest off resistance. We're going to obviously look at where E&Ms and everything else are later on, but we punched through that level beforehand, and now we're kind of sat in this zone, about 460. Again, we'll go into a bit more detail. What I really just want to see, if you can't stay to the end, is just get above this. Get above that level, 465, and an actual close above it. And the simple reason is, you know, downtrend, 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 downtrend. Trying to get the reversal. I mean, this one isn't really enough of a pullback, but we really want to break this level here so we can claim a higher high. You know, this has just been one move up. Yes, we took that out, but we didn't have a pullback. We want to get above this level. And then I think we're going to be in a very strong position. Now, other things that we look at, EMAs and everything else, we've broken through quite a few of those. We'll have a look where that sits later. But just on a massive, zoomed out, broad brush picture, strong move up, very exciting from 170 all the way up to pretty much 470. But just close above that 465. Give us that confirmation, and then we can start talking about that next battle in and around 600. But let's just assume that doesn't happen. You know, well, there's so many lines on here. Let me try and get rid of a few. You know, if for whatever reason we fail here, I still think this line, this diagonal white line, which I suppose by the time we get to it would be sort of the low teens in the 400s, I think that'd be a good level for a bounce anyway and a move back up. So don't be afraid if there is a bit of a slight pullback. It's nothing to worry about there. We want to see some, you know, consolidation before making that next move up to hopefully 600s. And then, hey, who knows? New attempts at a new all-time high. Okay, we'll get into more detail on that in a moment. Hey there, Tim, Cliff. All good. Right, let's just try and actually find some understanding of why the markets have moved so well. For me, I think one of the biggest things that has been driving the narrative over the last 2 or 3 months has been the tariffs. Obviously, the biggest one just being China and the US just knocking 7 bells out of each other and adding 10% each time. Well, over the weekend, we found out that actually there's going to be a 90-day pause. Well, not necessarily a pause, but at least a reduction, significant reduction over the tariffs for 90 days while they try and sort of get around the table and sort things out. And we can see that the US are cutting the tariffs from 145%, wild that that's what it was, down to 30%, and then reciprocal kind of percentage, I suppose, in dropping from 125 to 10% from China to the US. The markets love that, and particularly the traditional markets, the likes of the NASDAQ, the S&P, all performing very strongly. We've seen a lot of the big 7 moving up aggressively, some off the back of their own positive news as well. But it just kind of feels that actually the stock markets are really starting to show signs of a continuation for the bull market. And maybe a little bit too early because, you know, it does move slightly slower and on the weekly time frames. But I've got a good feeling that actually probably in about 12 months time, we'll just look back at this as an actual pullback rather than what it was, what it felt like at the time, which was an absolute capitulation. But things seem to be moving in the right direction. I mean, I haven't bothered bringing the news article up, but there was also potentially positive talks with Ukraine and Russia trying to get around the table. I know that that's a slippery one at the best of times, and I think Ukraine's only now really interested if a peace deal, ceasefire, something like that, could be agreed on before they get on the table. But I thought that was going to help the markets. Maybe that one's just cooled off a little bit, but certainly something that will provide some positive momentum and ammunition again if we can get some good news in and around that. And then we get to the crux of it in Altseason. And as I sort of said yesterday, Saturday even, you know, you can pick out the odd alt that has actually outperformed Bitcoin, but generally over the last 2 years, Bitcoin has been significantly outperforming the alt market. That's not just a theory of mine. This chart here is an absolute, I mean, this is on the day, let's put it on the weekly. This chart here tells exactly how and why. This is Bitcoin dominance. Look at it. We were down at 40% in November, December 2022. We just missed out on 70% here. Had a huge increase, 75% increase in Bitcoin dominance over the last 2 years. And aside from a couple of altcoins that have sustained and systematically outperformed Bitcoin, majority of the time Bitcoin has done well. And then we've had this sort of, I don't know, potential flip. People now starting to get very excited about altcoins. And I think a lot of them probably seen a similar kind of level of TA that I saw to make it think that way. But whereas we were seeing over the last 4 weeks, maybe the odd couple of Fartcoin, BitTensor, maybe a couple of other memes outperforming, suddenly we're starting to see even the things like Ethereum waking up, outperforming Bitcoin. Granted, last day and a half, maybe not, but generally outperforming Bitcoin over the last week or so. And so there has been talk about this resurgence in altcoins and Altseason starting. And for me, what I was looking at, well, there's a couple of things. So, and this is on the weekly, it's going to be drawn very rough, but you kind of got some sort of channel up here, okay? Sort of that north kind of channel. And then we've got, I don't know where you want to draw it, but you can either take this one here, which I know looks a little bit messy because there's things at the bottom, but generally kind of working in and around that. Or you could say, actually, we'll pull this one down. We'll have a look sort of here and we'll bring it all the way down to, you know, where we were at the start of the season. Whichever way you want to do it. I kind of actually prefer the first one just because there's a lot more price action in and around here. But either way, whichever way you want to have a look at it, I think a lot of people were saying, well, Bitcoin has been on this run. It's continued to climb. We're suddenly getting into an area of resistance in which we have had that pullback. And, you know, there we go again. It's hit that level and it has bounced back. Now, that happened actually sort of Friday, I think the turn happened. We go back onto the daily. When was it? Thursday it happened. And we saw this break come down. And for me, that wasn't enough for me to make any kind of decision. Obviously, I start talking about Bitcoin on Saturday, so it continues to break back down. I don't take my Trezor with me, so I have to wait till Sunday. But actually, this was the best thing I could have done because what I was waiting for, which is what happened perfectly, is this green candle here. We had that pullback up to the 50 EMA on the Bitcoin dominance and then a rejection from that. And so it was at this level that I decided I'm actually going to sell some of my Bitcoin. By the time I've done Sunday and Monday, I'm talking about 60% of my personal allocation of Bitcoin. Still got 100% business allocation Bitcoin. That's not getting in touch with. But I thought, right, I'm going to move that into alts. Predominant alt I moved it into was BitTensor. And it's continued to fall. And for me, where do I see this kind of looking? I'm initially going to be having a look, see where we are when we get down to 61%. Now, that's only a fall of 2%. But in the terms of what that 2% can translate into altcoins, I think there's potential for a significant uplift of any Bitcoin that I have sold there if we can get down. I mean, granted, BitTensor may not move, and that's sort of a risk that you take when you do this and you only go into one alt. But if we're just thinking about it as a grand scheme, I think that's an element to have a look at. I think when we have a look at vector candles and we have a look at other EMAs on smaller timeframes, then actually 58% is probably a level that it may spike down to. So that's sort of where I would be looking. And then the real question has to be asked when you get down to that level, do we bounce from there? Which we could well do, continue with Bitcoin dominance. Altseason, it was only a mini one. Sorry about that, guys. We continue with Bitcoin dominance. But if we start thinking about breaking that level, we could really be in that sort of face melting phase of an Altseason. Great for us, as long as we position ourselves right, maybe actually starting to spell towards the end of this bull market. I'm not making any judgment on that just yet. We're just going to see how it plays. But that felt like the right time and the right action to take in terms of selling that BTC It's one of the reasons I was holding it. And so I'm just looking to try and play that advantage. Now, when we start to have a look at some of the indicators for Altseason, actually the evidence is kind of suggesting we're not really there at the moment. Only looking at a 24 on the Bitcoin altcoin index. It's actually saying it's Bitcoin season. We were at 33 yesterday, and today's action, a couple of days ago, has actually sort of cooled that off a little bit. I don't know the difference between the two in terms of how they measure it, but on CoinMarketCap, just in this box here, it's actually around about 34, so slightly better. But only a few weeks ago, we were down in the low teens. So we're starting to build that up, which is why we can feel that we're positioning ourselves in there. And for those that have just held significant altcoin portfolios, yes, you're probably down from where you were this time last year, or certainly from the election last year, but you've probably seen significant uplifts. I think when I looked at Delta in the last month, I'm up sort of 40% on some of the altcoins that I've been having. So things are moving in the right direction. And again, you know, we did touch on it, but the reality of it is we're starting to get that good economic data continuing to come through. So CPI data today, we saw that had dropped. I mean, it was forecast to have been 0.3. We got it at 0.2, but we're really looking at the core CPI year on year. Was at 2.4. We're now at 2.3. Inflation is cooling off. Things should now be getting cheaper. This is indications that risk on, it should start to wake up. And if we have a look at it, what we should be seeing is the assets that are deemed to be, you know, safe havens should be dropping, and gold has been dropping. I mean, gold's kind of looking like a bit of a significant double top pattern there. We're right on the neckline of that. Maybe there's a potential for that to fall. But if the markets are getting more buoyant, people are going to start moving away from safe havens, start going to those risk on assets. So good economic data coming out. Be interesting to see how Jerome and the Fed start to try and spin that data. I think we've also got some unemployment data. Yeah, we've got unemployment data on Thursday, as well as PPI as well. So there's plenty of other things to have a look at. Actually, I tell you what, Thursday's looking very interesting, because we've got PPI data, unemployment data, then 10 minutes later, old Chair Powell is actually speaking, and you know he's going to get some questions asked about that economic data that's come out this week, and probably what he's going to do next to ignore President Trump. I'm just trying to see where he's speaking. It's just some random conference, but there's always some, you know, some nuggets to be taken away from that. So certainly something to have a look at. Oh, here we are on the rest of the traditional markets taking advantage of that. I mean, again, I showed you the NASDAQ earlier. This is the S&P 500. And what was all-time high before? Let me just check here. So we are... yeah, we're 4% away from, you know, reclaiming an all-time high. And we can see that move there, even down on S&P, got down to what, beginning of April, 4,800. We're now back at 5,900. So just an incredible move up. And for those that were able to take advantage of that, then, you know, well played. That's kind of what we're looking for. I'm just wondering if we do zoom out. That was on the 12-hour. Let's just see. I mean, you know, when you look at this on the monthly, sorry, on the weekly, you know, these dips happen all the time, and it just looks like we're going to continue from bottom left to top right, how we always like it to run. Monthly chart, I'm sure, is going to look very similar. Matter of fact, a beautiful low test on that there, continuing to trudge up. And this candle here, I mean, we've still got 17 days left on the candle, so obviously it could completely reverse itself by then. But it's looking like it's probably going to be a complete engulfing candle of what we saw in March, and then just priming ourselves for a move to come back up. I've not really been seeing any articles or discussions about whether or not the R word, recession, is off the table. We'll just have to wait to see how that pans about. But, you know, things seem to be moving in the right direction, and I can't remember when the next rate cut is, and I can't remember if it's got on the other website. It's probably going to be mid to late June. Let's see if I can find it. Sorry about this. Okay, yeah, so it's going to be 18th of June. So we'll have one more set of CPI data, which is on the 11th of June, and then the week after that, we're going to have an opportunity for another rate cut. So I think June's CPI data, well, and PPI and unemployment, going to be very, very significant, and could put an awful lot of pressure on the Fed for that elusive rate cut. I mean, if we have a look at some of the other things, sort of like gold, MicroStrategy, again, strong move up. Sorry, let's get it back on something a bit more manageable. Strong move back up. Obviously, no surprise there in terms of how Bitcoin's been performing, but actually doing well. Nvidia, again, I mean, this was down at 85 not so long ago. I know they've announced some deal with Saudi Arabia today, which has helped move the price up today. Earnings won't come out for Nvidia until the end of the month, so potential for another bolster of a move up there. Tesla looking strong. Palantir also looking strong. I don't have them all on this one. I got a traditional chart for most, but those are the ones I'm just monitoring because they're part of my SIP. But yeah, looking very good. One of the other things that Tim. So I'm going to get onto Coinbase's reason for its move in a moment. But you're right, Coinbase had a monster move today, 20% up there. Now, one of the things that I did spend a little bit of time kicking in the teeth whilst it was down was Ethereum on Saturday, and just how it is just utterly disappointed, not just in terms of a retail altcoin, but actually how the big boys in the ETFs have viewed it, and there's just been zero interest at all. But of course, you throw that out into the universe, and the universe is just going to come back and slap you in the face. And we actually found out this week that BlackRock have actually tabled meetings with the SEC to make amendments to the Ethereum ETF. And the reason they're wanting to do that, and they're not the first to do it, Grayscale have done it, Fidelity have done it, the fact that the big boy BlackRock is coming around, is they're wanting to include staking within the Ethereum ETF. And we've sort of always wondered, well, why are institutions not interested in Ethereum? And perhaps it is the fact that actually they are more than happy to stay safe with Bitcoin. And if Ethereum isn't allowing you to take advantage of any staking returns or anything like that, then what's the point in putting the risk in? But if we do get an amendment to how that ETF is formed, then maybe actually suddenly Ethereum is more appealing. And that's got nothing to do with why Altseasons are moving at the moment, but to go back to that traditional kind of move in terms of Bitcoin, Ethereum, large cap altcoins, degen coins, maybe this would be enough to get there, not to mention the 70 other ETFs that are sat on the SEC desk. A lot of them altcoins are proof of stake, and could have some staking capability within those, which then may make them more attractive if a precedent is actually set attached to the ETF. So that's definitely something to monitor there. So I'm gonna have a quick drink. And then we start to see these articles. These articles are always interesting because, it's always interesting to see whether or not we're just getting bullish news or negative news. But we started talking about some pretty important levels at the moment. So 106,000. I know some of you are going to say, well, Harry, that is not the all-time high of 109,000. It's not. However, it's where one of the major closes are. When you actually have a look up here on the, is it the daily? Yeah, the daily. So the daily it's only ever closed at 106,000. So yes, price has nipped up higher than that, but we want to see an actual close at 106,000. Now, I've talked about it more times than blue in the face. When price is going up, the big boys are generally selling into that. I didn't get the order book up, so I can't see where the sell orders, the majority of the sell orders are in and around that 106 level to see if it is. I used to have a subscription. I don't anymore. Couldn't be bothered sort of cycling through another website. So I will have a look and I'll post it afterwards. But we're starting to see that is a level to take. And if we actually do have a look now, at this chart here, I was on this is the daily. We can see, that these are in yellow boxes. I'm getting all flustered now. Sitting at 106, 108. So they are the liquidation heat map levels, okay? The significant ones. That's kind of the band that we're working in at the moment. What's this grayed out one here? Well, last week we were actually talking about that 99 to 101,000. And as I said, look at the ease at where it went through. I thought we might actually have another little battle in and around 100K, but no, we weren't having any of that. Straight through it, we've whipped through, And then what have we held off? We've just held off here. You know, we wicked up to that. Obviously, we will have eaten some of this because this probably was at 105 with some of the smaller levels. But we've not quite managed to clear the daily all-time high before rejecting it back down. And obviously, there would have just been a significant amount of pressure there to push that back. We've come back. There's no real fib on the higher timeframes that I use with this chart to look at. We've come back to that previous area of liquidation heat map, found some support of that. And today, looking kind of nice in terms of that strong move up. And if we can close, I mean, we'll go on smaller timeframes in a moment, but if we can stay above that 104,000 on the close there, I really do feel that 106 level is for the taking, especially off the back of today's data. And it'd be really interesting to see how the Asian markets take that data when they open later on tonight to move it through. But what I really want to see, first and foremost, is a close above 106,000. And then we can talk about challenging. Let's get the exact figure for everyone. Can't quite get it because I should be zoomed in. But 100, let's just call it 109,350 for a little bit of change. We can start looking at where that one there is going to go. Now, we've seen this before. So it's just Bitcoin on the weekly time frame. 50 EMA is quarters. Look like an absolutely beautiful movement there. But again, looking at this higher time frame, 5 days to go. So let's not get too excited about this candle. But we're actually at 104,500 is the weekly close for the all-time high. So potentially a good strong move there. Now, we have had 6 green weekly candles in a row. So, you know, don't freak out if we do get a red one, but it's certainly something there to look at. And something that I have seen people talking about is where could we start to see that next target? And I'm going to get pie in the sky with you because why not? We had this period last year, weekly time frame. I'm not going to draw it accurately. I'm just trying to get so you can see the picture. Some of you will know what I'm drawing immediately. But we had this move here, consolidation period, which obviously turned into a bull flag, and then we punched out through the top. Now, obviously, we didn't get as high as we wanted to, but I bet if I put that on a linear, it's going to look even worse. But I draw that down a bit more here. Move it across, kind of tying in a little bit better there. But I don't like looking at it on the linear, so I'm going to change all of that. So we've seen that bull flag work out before after a nice strong period of consolidation, which, for those of you who remember, didn't feel very comfortable for 9 months of last year whilst we were going through that. But, you know, distant memories looking very good. And we just look at where we've been through again right now. Again, weekly time frame. So yeah, I appreciate someone's going to say it's not the neatest looking, but you kind of get the picture that we've had that period of consolidation. It wasn't as long, I'll give you that. This period of consolidation was really 168 days versus, what's going to be this one? 217. So a couple of months shorter, but we've had a good amount of consolidation in and around there. And if we now start to think, well, where could that possibly go? And this is, you know, this could be just the final level we get to, because the figure comes out here, it's pretty high. But actually, we learn that there's 150,000. There's potential certainly for a move as strong as that up to 150,000. Now, we need to do a few things before we can get there. But if we are sort of thinking about closing out towards the end of this bull run and some targets to get to, I know 150,000 might be on the lower end of a lot of people's realistic targets, but in terms of sort of just this bull flag alone, I see that as a kind of a level that we could realistically start to think about getting. Now, if we want to get higher, maybe we're going to have another period of consolidation before we get that move up. And I don't really want to get into the how high can this thing goes. I think people have tried to put a label on it in the past, and you see all sorts, you know, anywhere from 150,000 to 1 million. Hey, if it falls at anywhere between those levels, we're all going to be very happy. Right, let me just close that. Oh, sorry, let's close that one down. Was there something else I wanted to show from this? I don't think there was. We have a look at the ETF inflows. Our canary is fat these days. I mean, you remember that lean diet the canary was on? We actually thought she was going to die in March, where it was almost 3 solid weeks of red. I think the fact that we had a couple of bank holidays in America saved us, because our canary in the coal mine is 3 weeks of red. We've really got to think about selling. Well, now it's just buy. And these are not small amounts, you know. We almost had $1 billion at the end of April. Yesterday, only 70 million, but, you know, Friday, $350 million worth of BTC bought by BlackRock alone, looking very good. And even the sells from the rest, a lot sparser. I know there's a lot of zeros in there. There's some people are just giving up on buying, but it is looking strong. Sorry, let's have a look here. 1st of June is the next decision for the timelines of the ETH ETF staking. Interesting, thank you for that. And the MACD on the weekly has also shifted green. Last time this happened, Q4 of 2024, before that Q4 of 2023, both of which had screen runs. Well, you're right. I mean, Q4, beautiful run up there. And then Q3. Yeah, I mean, some people will say there was a news narrative for each of them. Obviously, in 2023, it was a lead up to the ETF being confirmed, which was a narrative. And Q4 2024 was Trump's victory. But doesn't matter. I'm not bothered about the news in terms of the price action. I think that's there. And like you say, on the weekly, very important. A lot harder to fake it on the weekly, though, the higher you go. Oh, what's happened? That's just an advert. In terms of fear and greed for Bitcoin, we've moved pretty quickly into 70. But you think about, let's see if we can bring it up. That's 3 months enough? Maybe not. I have to go for a year. So last time we were at 100K, we were 84 on the fear and greed index. That's 22nd of Jan. Let's just make sure that's right. 22nd of Jan, or 20th of Jan here, was 109. That was the all-time high. So 20th of Jan was the all-time high. 20th of Jan, 22nd. There we go. We were at 76. So we're not quite at the all-time high, but we're at 70. We're not in extreme greed. We're just at greed. But the way altcoins have been moving, the positive news that's coming out, the traditional markets are coming out, not to mention how Bitcoin has been performing, I'm not surprised that sentiment was able to move from 50 to 70 in a matter of days. But yeah, good to see there. And Mark's already mentioned it in chat, but for those of you that haven't looked at chat or been reading, going back to Coinbase and some positive news, and Coinbase really being sort of a litmus test in terms of cryptocurrency sentiment. People track how the Coinbase app is doing on the Apple Store and the Play Store and all that kind of stuff. I think it was the first crypto-based company to be listed on the NASDAQ. And well, we got the news yesterday, this isn't this article, but we got the news yesterday that it is now to be listed on the S&P as well. So, just sort of continuing with its legitimacy, I suppose. And that's reflected completely in today's price with that announcement. I mean, you thought you were going to get a pullback. We closed yesterday at 210, basically, and we're almost at 260. I got a feeling that gap's going to be filled. Yeah, a very strong positive move from there. And to go back to this article here, what this is basically going on is just talking about that illiquidness of Bitcoin. And actually what we're seeing is massive outflows, not just from Coinbase, but this article focuses on Coinbase, saying that $1 billion worth of Bitcoin has left Coinbase and has gone to whale wallets or just to general wallets, which is, usually a sign that people are starting to shore up, thinking we're going to get a bit higher. It's when it starts flowing in massively that we have to worry that people are thinking the top is in and we're selling. So again, good to see. I mean, it's 10,000 Bitcoin left the exchange on the 9th. And it talks about that. They think there's around 14 million Bitcoin that are considered illiquid at the moment. You think we're not even at 20 million in circulating supply. That's only 6 million. That's not necessarily on exchanges that are just also on short-term wallets as well. So it's not that much really to play with. And it's just spiked up significantly, almost 200,000 in the last couple of weeks. Okay, we have rattled through that. I'm going to just cover this question, which is for the poll, which we'll have a look at in a second. We'll do some charting and then we'll knock it on the head because most of you have actually listened to what I had to say on Saturday anyway. But if there is anything you want to ask away, then please do. So here's the question that Taylor sort of posed. And thank you for those that have commented on the poll. If anyone hasn't yet and you want to add your say, then feel free to while I read out this rather lengthy, but I think kind of useful question. So it's about subnets. Given the recent news about miners on subnet 8 holding and then dumping their alpha and our experience with other markets like meme coins, do we anticipate rug pulls becoming a significant issue in the emerging subnet market? learning from the volatility and risks of meme coins. How can we best navigate this space? So look, I don't care if it's subnets, meme coins, or just general trading of sort. There will forever be, it's in human nature, if there is a system in place to make money, there will be bad actors in it that will game it so that they can make the money from that. That is just sort of natural across human nature, no matter what industry you are in. So we're always going to come across bad actors. I don't really understand or know the story behind Subnet 8. I couldn't even tell you what Subnet 8 actually is. But if they have just dumped their alpha coin, taking their toys home and taking all the funds, then yeah, that's what we're going to expect. And that's kind of what you do have to expect. These subnets are coming online so quickly. I appreciate Subnet 8 obviously is going to be an OG given it's a single figure. But the reality of it, subnets have only been around since the middle of February. They are coming on incredibly fast. And, to be fair, you guys are acting on that. And I say you guys and girls are acting on those when they're only a few hours, well, maybe not a few hours, but a few days old. So without thorough research, you are likely to run into, plays that don't work. Now, whether or not that is, you just accept that and that's how it goes and that's why you're investing in so many different ones, I'll leave that to yourself. But I'm not saying that subnets are like meme coins, but they're popping up very fast. Liquidity is tough. From what I understand, it's low. The market moves in a really weird sense. It doesn't necessarily move the way that the rest of the altcoin markets move. For some people, it's also confusing because you're not tracking value in terms of USDT unless you add another conversion to it. You're tracking value against Tau. So you've got to understand how Tau is doing, how the alpha is doing, how Tau's doing against the dollar, etc., and how that works. So it's going to be complicated in terms of learning from the volatility. I think the market's too young. It's just going to remain volatile. We'll have a look. We'll put this on whilst I'm talking. For those of you that eagle-eyed on you, obviously this is Tau stats. I've got all of them listed, but all you really need to do is just look at these line charts the last 7 days. There are some that have done well, of course there are, but a lot of them are red or down at the moment. You can kind of have a look in the center column whilst I'm chatting. It's hourly, 24 hours, weekly, and monthly, and you can make a judgment on yourself. Whilst we do that, of course, let me just move this question onto another screen whilst I'm chatting, and then you can have a look at that while I'm sort of navigating through the rest of it. I would imagine that it'll probably be the exception rather than the rule, but I wouldn't rule out further instances of subnet holders doing that. I don't know how far the due diligence needs to go to even launch a subnet. Obviously, I know there's a financial barrier to do that. And of course, there may be a reason why they've had to sell their alpha. I'll just hold my hands up and say, I'm not involved. I don't necessarily know. So then anyway, Taylor goes on to say, on another note regarding pot allocation, I know Simon is heavily invested into subnets now with his root commitment down to 20%, which is, that's conviction. I think that's the word to use there. As a general consensus, what are others in the groups allocating? Could we put this out on tonight's call and get a feel for it? So there you go. The pot size at the moment, very interesting. Only 14 votes. I get it. We've got 20 times that plus more in Discord. But out of this little sample, 70% actually are not putting anything into subnets. And you can only put 4 options. So obviously they're kind of broad brush. There's around about 15% that are between 20 and 50% of their portfolio are in subnets. And then full DJ mode, 50% plus is another 15% of people. So thank you for everyone that put that in there. I'll just end that there. I've lost it now. Where did that? There we go. So I think from what I understand anyway, there's just a lot of people that are just more than happy to sit on the side for a variety of reasons, which I feel like I've spoken about for the last 2 weeks. So if anyone who is in either the two of the 15%, 50% or 20 and 50, and you want to comment, but I think a lot of the reason why people are holding off is they just don't have the time. And the way things are moving, not just with new subnets coming on, not just with how the price is moving and trying to just carry out significant research to try and garner that edge, but also just the rate of which I know Simon is sort of moving pots around, etc. they've just said, it's too much. I can't do it. I'm quite happy just to sit in the tower. And that's how I sit with it. I've just got other things going on in my life. And if you do something like this haphazardly, losing my words there, you just, more often than not, you're going to either luck it and make a little bit of a gain, or actually you're going to miss out and probably significantly hamper yourself there. Now, I'm not involved, so I don't know the full allocation. I'm just trying to find, but I know that Habib, I don't know if Habib's on the call. He won't mind me sharing this, I'm sure. I'm just making sure there's no significant information, personal information of his, just how low his battery is. He's keeping a track of the subnets that he is in, which I think he is trying to follow. Simon, this is a few days old, this one. So I've tried to add to it just on my list. And the way I've counted it, I think if you've followed 100% of the way, you're currently in approximately 50 separate subnets, which, you've heard my views on, how much research you should do per altcoin that you're in per day. And I kind of feel the subnets is another play. Now, granted, you may be treating them like just a shooting gallery for meme coins. That's absolutely fine. You're not going to do the research for them, but you do that taking on the risk. 50 is a lot, okay? And it's just trying to keep hold of that. I know liquidity is also quite low, so getting that stake into 50 of them, but then also if you need to get it out, maybe you can't do it in one go. So that's just how I interpret that. You've asked one last bit of a question, which I will go through now. It says, personally, you, as in Taylor, are spending a lot of time on this and you're enjoying it. Well, if that's the case, then perfect. If you've got the time to do it and you're actually enjoying it, and more importantly, you're getting something out of it, I say keep going for it. Please pay yourself while you're doing it. I know sometimes you just know the grass is always green. I want to keep it because we're worth even more. You're taking a massive risk here. It could just fall apart at any time. Just be comfortable in taking some more away, even if it's just to put it back into root. Anyway, I've said my piece there. So despite the market being so young and my caution still being high, I'm comfortable trading 35% of my pot. However, I'm also seeing the potential upside of putting more in, but I'm at a crossroads. I want more results before I start allocating more. That is great. But the only results you're ever going to see, remember, is if you take profit, because you could go down a fool's errand of, oh yeah, I'm on paper profit, I'm massively high. You go and put more in and you get wiped out there. So you just how are you defining results? For me, results is actual money. Yeah, that's what we're in the game for, isn't it? So just if you feel that you've done it for long enough, and these are new, and some of the ones as I scroll down, they're so new that they, have so little data within them. And there's all of these ones that are apparently coming in, but are not quite active yet, whatever the hell that necessarily means. So how do you know how that's going to work? I would suggest TA is probably not the best. It's certainly one that we need to have a look at. I know there's this sentiment thing down here, and I know some people are tracking it through sort of percentage down, up or down, and how that works across sentiment. Whatever works for yourself. All I'd say, Taylor, is get on the subnet section of Discord first and foremost. Have a chat with everyone. But if you're looking for results, you define what a result is for you. And if it doesn't involve actually taking some profits, I would suggest you're probably kidding yourself a little bit there. But yeah, I don't even know how people in the group are actually doing. I mean, would anyone care to comment just generally whether you're up or down, how long you've been in subnets for, and if you're up or down? You don't have to give us an amount. But anyway, that's just my view on it. I know there was some people, some subnet owners at the cuddle, and they spoke very positively and with conviction, and listening to everything Simon had to say as well. But for me, it just didn't change my opinion, because it just made everything seem more confusing. And that's it. I'm not necessarily against the theory behind subnets and the alpha. I just don't have time to do it. When they started talking about subnets within subnets, though, then I was starting to think this was a bit of a crapshoot. So, okay. Let's leave that there. Let's get on some actual charting, shall we? Run this thing down. And whilst we've been talking, Bitcoin's actually having that move continuing to the upside. We're actually on the 4-hour chart at the moment. And when you look at the 4-hour chart, just making sure, since Friday, we've really just been doing another period of consolidation. And I know we had that pullback yesterday, but what did it hit? What did it hit? It hit the one thing I always wanted to hit, the 50 EMA, and it bounced away from that with strength. Now we're at the top end of this consolidation period, so who knows how long that can last. But we really are at the top end of it. So, a break through this, then I'd be really happy to see. I mean, I'll zoom in and I'll start to put some levels. There's no real remaining vector candle zones there, but the obvious target now has to be the top of this vector there. That's what, I mean, it's the peak of, this local high, if you will. So obviously we're targeting that, but if this was within the noise, that's kind of where I would want to see it have a go. What day was that it did that? Monday as well, in the morning. Asian market did it, and then we lost it away, and we're building it back up. Really interested in how Asia's going to play tonight. So for those of you that are based over there, we're based in continental America, you may get to see some action while we're all sleeping. Let's just close that. In terms of, I know I've had discussions offline with some people in terms of where we sit in terms of the move. And, this obviously being on the 4 hour, very clear W there. I've sort of said rise 1 consolidation period, rise 2 consolidation period, which would really make this a rise 3 consolidation period. I don't want to worry anyone about that. But if that's the case, are we seeing now the right-hand side of an M formation? Potentially. Let's just have that out there so we know that we may have to deal with that and where it's coming. How do we know if that's actually going to happen? Whether or not we start to see a move down here, obviously, and then a break of the 50 EMA is what we're doing. Now, it doesn't mean that we need to absolutely shit the bed and go all the way back down here. Of course not. But it just means that we may be in a period of resetting. And that's fine. It's on the 4 hour. We can live with that one as we go. But I can't necessarily ignore that. I think this one is a clear rise 1 with some consolidation back to 50 EMA. You've got to give it for that one as well. You've got to give that one. Now, there are instances where we just don't get a drop. And actually what we do is we just get a continuation. And maybe it continues back up. It's normally the exception, but the rule. But given, just the way the market is, the sentiment in the market, the elation that may come with challenging that all-time high again, then yeah, we might start to see that one flip through. Going on some lower time frames, even on the hourly, nosebleed alert. What's this little line here? Oh, so I've got a psychological high and low. So we are attacking the psychological high at the moment, actually, interestingly. Don't normally have those on there, but look at yesterday's price action. This is why going down on the lower time frames is always a good move. You see that, you're delighted. You know that the price has come down. It's hit the 200 EMA on the hourly, which we know is the 50 EMA on the 4 hour. It's then formed a W formation, and within this move away, it's broken through the 50 EMA, come back down, retested it, and then broken through again. That is just screaming an opportunity there, if you were placing trades, to be able to place that trade. And as we continue to move back up, I do think that actually, maybe even before the end of the day, we have a go at that. We have a go at that level. And to be frank, when we get there, we're right at that 106, which is that kind of order book level we were talking about. But I think, some strong momentum within there. Yes, we've given some options and some risks for downside action, but I want to try and stay as positive as I can until that breaks. Let's get back onto the higher time frames and then go on to BitTensor and work our way through some of it. But even on the daily, just testing the 10 EMA, apologies. The daily, there's still that level to come back down. And we talked last week about, maybe we do see a sort of a retest back down here, but don't freak out if we do, okay? The freak out levels are much lower down, So, okay, let's get on to BitTensor, if it flows through. So, daily chart, which we've seen, strong move up there, continuing with that strong move. And again, that's happened in the last hour whilst we've been talking. But just looking on the daily at 4 hours, it's going to look a lot cleaner, but just a nice bit of consolidation over the weekend after that strong move Thursday, Friday. We do have that vector candle there. We've got plenty of EMAs but we're the right side of all of them. The 50 still needs to cross over the 200. And guess what? For those of you that are eagle-eyed, we're witnessing the birth here of the 800 EMA. Just starting to get enough data for that one to start to print. Now, hey, we don't want this to get anywhere near the 800 EMA, but there it is for us. But as I mentioned on that first chart, we're now actually challenging. We, close above this bit here, and we're going to get above that hump that we wanted to get through at 465. Let's just move that there. That's 465, isn't it? It is that. That's what we want it to close above. But can you see how before when we were on the way back down and we were able to successfully take those side steps because we were using the 50 EMA, the 50 EMA cloud, and the lower highs. We can't do that now because actually none of the EMAs are getting in our way. Actually, what we've got at the moment is they're all lining up quite nicely down there. Now we can use the fibs to see if there's where next might lead us. I'm just going to go body to body as we do. And again, we've broken through that 618 just prior to the weekend. That would have been Friday. We've done that. Maybe 530 is on the cards then, this 786 kind of level. That's taken from the top down to the bottom. Now, if you wanted to do wick to wick, I don't think it's going to move things too much, to be honest with you. No, not really. I think everything's kind of there. It's 541 now. It's moved it by $3. So, yeah, not too much. Sorry, $8. Not too much. But I think that's probably a logical level from the upside for us to have a consideration at. It also then would mean us challenging this high here. Maybe we just see something a bit like that and move our way up. Now on the daily, in terms of sort of rises and movements, let's get rid of this fib and get rid of that circle as well. There's a lot of data on here, apologies. Information at least. Obviously the W's there. Not the W I like to see, but a W nonetheless. I know some people have said inverted head and shoulders. I'm not going to disagree with that either. But what we've had, for me at least, I kind of think this is probably all of I's one. I really do. I don't think on the daily at least, I just wouldn't call that enough of a pullback or any real action there. Just taking a bit of a breather and a move up. So if this is the start of an alt season, there's plenty of room for this to move to the upside. Slow and steady with the daily. I know that doesn't look like slow and steady. Maybe we need to slow it down a little bit. 4 hour time frame. Having a look at some of this. I mean, this is that W, or this is the 4 hour W, I suppose. Maybe one and a pullback. Oops, pullback there. And then you're like, actually two. What's happening? And then you're 2 with a consolidation here. And then this is the leg up from 3. And I don't think that's a consolidation yet. I just think we're on that leg up where it needs to go. So that's what I'd be looking for there. But again, look, now with the 800, which has been around the 4 hour for a long time, that's crossed back over from the 200. So we've got all of the EMAs in the right direction. Phillips are there. We've got some vector zones. Now on the 4 hour, we were talking about that sort of 433, the 533 to 541 level. And actually that's kind of this bit here. 430 to 440, which is, got some vector candles there or some unclaimed vector zones to potentially sort of just be that target towards, tying that in with the fib level. I don't think that's an unrealistic level to get through, assuming today as a daily candle we close at our current level or above our current level. Why can't I find my brush? That bit there. Gotta bake that. Get that and that one. Happy days. Near for me's been doing well, moving up, but it's got a lot of fib levels to work its way through. How have I done that fib? It seems the opposite way around. What have I done? I've done it from over here. Okay. Sorry, let me go back on the daily. I know not many of you are in near, so I'm not going to bother going through it. But to be honest, it's a good reflection of a lot of altcoins kind of out there, and it's performed well over the year. There's potentially another, double bottom down at April like we've seen, maybe another inverted head and shoulders starting to move back through. But unlike Tau, we've still got the 200 and the 800 EMA on the daily in our way. We've got some vector zones to get through there, and we have gone through this here, but there's definitely some movement that we're going to have to get through. And then I'd say we're right on that 382. And notice how we've actually stuttered over the last couple of days. and it had been retested against that 382. So be interesting to see how we challenge that one there, but still got a bit of work to get through. And the reason I say that is that just a lot of them just look very similar in terms of how that is going. The price action kind of looks the same. So ETH has done well. I was giving ETH an utter kick in last week. That was when I was last. Oh no, when was I last on? Here. So we were at 1800, and then it just went, thanks for that, Harry. And it's flown up very nicely on the daily there, showing some good movement. We've almost got 1,000. We're almost up 50% in the last week in terms of ETH. So it has done well. Obviously, news about BlackRock wanting to try and have that discussion is going to help. But is this the start of the alt season and we start to see that Ethereum wakes up first? We should have checked. Let's actually have a check. Nobody cares in terms of institutions. So that's not really changing. This is retail driven. Where that one is going. CAS has done well. Look at this, continuing its move. I'm just going to pull this out a little bit so we can kind of see. But again, this is why I like fibs. They just work very well, and just look at that price action in around the 382 and the 5 off there. A double bottom here. We've come back through. We initially shot through it, held below the 618, but today no such problem there. Very much like Tau in terms of potentially the 786 would be the target. And again, you can see how this one double bottom and also started to make the higher lows and the higher highs. So perfect in terms of trend reversal there. For Casper, memes have woken up. Altcoin, I think Altcoin's actually just not really gone to sleep, to be fair. But other memes have woken up. Trump's still looking a little bit toppy there. Because it's obviously a bit of a crap token. It had that pump, which someone reliably informed me was if you owned a lot of it, you got to have dinner with President Trump, which may have caused that. But it's got that double top. I think there's potential targets necessarily down here. Milana, as good as it may have been over the last 24, 48 hours, still in just a crushing demise down to mediocrity down there. SP at 69. Starting to wake up and actually start to see that, believe in it, as Murad would say, and start to go through there. And I know Simon posted his meme portfolio, which I think went from 89k or something down to 20k, and it's now up at 91. I think, memes are starting to see that, which again, you look back historically at other mini alt seasons, memes have always done well. So good to see from that there. In terms of other things, I don't think there's too much else necessarily to go through, just because as a community we're not really in that many tokens, so what's the point in going through them? What I will say though, because I should have mentioned this in here, but one of the things that BlackRock also want to speak to the SEC about is the tokenization of securities. Which is interesting because BlackRock are behind Ondo, which is a real world asset. Now, hasn't manifested itself into a huge price movement because we've had no dialogue as to what's happening there. And it's, when you think about it, of course, BlackRock would want the SEC to tokenize securities, especially as they own one of those tokens. But it's just interesting that they're trying to have those conversations at the same time. And hey, Ondo may well move if we do get some positive results from that. I've still managed to drag this out for an hour. Sorry, Taylor, you put some stuff there. No worries about the words, that's fine. You put my rule at present, seeing this as more of an experience. Can I just say, if it's just an experience, you're in 35%. That's a commitment in my eyes. An experience would be maybe 5%, but every time I take 50 profit now, 50% goes into root, good, and 50 stays in alpha to go again. Okay, that's fair enough. I can't argue with that. I'm happy to share. Currently, I'm up 20%. Perfect. And then Mark's gone to say that Trump coin grift ended yesterday, so I was expecting to see the coin tank from today onwards. Okay. Perfect. Right, I think I am going to knock it on the head there. Yeah, I will. I was going to waffle on for a little bit longer, but I won't. I'm not sure when the rest of the videos will come out from the cuddle. There is going to be a trading pub on Thursday at the usual time at 1 p.m. For those of you that did actually DM me over the weekend or on Sunday and just wanted some things back, some information back about whatever we either talked about in the bar or the talk itself, I will get around to getting back down to on those. Obviously, I was just focusing today on this. So try and answer all of those tomorrow. As always, I always say, if you have any questions, you need any help outside of subnets, because I'm not very good with those, just tag me, DM me, whatever you need to do to me. I will get back to you as quick as I can on that one. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Enjoy the rest of your week. Long may these green days continue. Don't be afraid now to update your Delta portfolio for the months where you didn't dare look at it. Now's the time to just have that courage to get in there and get it up to date, because you're going to want it to be up to date so you can really track how well your altcoins are doing going forward. I will let you know if I flip back from that BTC altcoin trade, because as I say, it's just to try and get myself some more BTC whilst I'm seeing that moving. But I'll keep everyone up to date on that. Enjoy the rest of your evening, everyone, and I'll speak to you all soon. Cheers now.